These astronauts are heading to Mars hoping to find a new home, but they are going to be face to face with the deadly organic life of the Red Planet. The commander of a Mars mission, Kate Bowman, narrates the situation on Earth in the year 2025. Humans had already caused irreversible damage to the Earth with pollution and overpopulation by the year 2000. So scientists began sending unmanned probes to Mars with bioengineered algae that were supposed to land on Mars, grow, and produce oxygen so that humans could one day live there. The mission went as planned for 20 years, but then suddenly the oxygen levels on Mars started dropping without explanation. Now the international community has come together to send a team of astronauts to Mars to investigate the situation, the first ever manned mission to Mars. In addition to Bowman, the team includes Chantilas, the chief science officer, Santen, the hot-headed co-pilot, Gallagher, the mechanical systems engineer or maintenance man, Birchinall, the bioengineer, and Pettengill, the terraforming expert. Also, on the team is a robot on loan from the military called Amy that will help the team navigate through Mars. They will be headed to Mars on a spaceship called Mars. 1.93 days of space travel pass, and relationships of different dynamics begin forming on the spaceship. There is tension between Pettengill and Santen because Santen is kind of like a high school jock or bully, while Pettengill is the nerd. Gallagher and Chantilas walk through the ship as Gallagher reminisces his childhood. He says his grandfather taught him to sail and chart directions using the stars. Chantilas talks about how, despite the fact that he is a scientist, science has not given him the answers to the really interesting questions of life, so he has taken up philosophy and is now searching for God. 144 days pass, and one day, as Bowman is coming out of the shower, Gallagher walks in and he doesn't know how to react to the sight of her melons. Bowman wants him to pretend that seeing her naked is perfectly normal, but he takes the opportunity to flirt with her and develop a romantic tension between them. Gallagher and Pettengill check up on Amy to make sure she is running smoothly. Pettengill thinks that the military removed Amy's lethal programming before loaning her for the mission, but Gallagher shows him that the programming is still in there. They have just switched her to navigation mode instead of military mode. 168 days pass, and one day, Gallagher and Birchinall are secretly brewing vodka on the ship when Bowman arrives and confronts them. It seems like she is going to be strict and punish them for it, but instead she joins them for a few drinks. The entire team is talking over drinks when Birchinall jokingly presents the idea that they should simply take over Mars as their own and never return. He assigns all the crew members jobs and declares himself king. He gives Bowman the job of queen and producing his babies. It's all in good fun, but Bowman gets offended. 182 days pass, and Mars 1 finally enters the orbit of Mars, and the team prepares for taking a shuttle down to the surface. On Mars, the team will be staying at an installation called HAB, which has been built using machines 6 months ahead of their arrival. As the teams prepare to go down to Mars, a solar flare occurs that produces massive radiation and damages the electronics of Mars 1. Bowman orders the entire team to get into the safe area while she stays and tries to manage the catastrophe. The solar flare passes without anyone getting hurt, but the ship's system is now thoroughly damaged, and they are stranded in space with zero power. Bowman says their only option is to go down to the HAB and figure it out from there. She tells the entire crew to suit up and get in the shuttle. She'll join them in a minute. She is going to make sure that the ship is secured at this spot so they can return to it later. However, Bowman learns that since there is no power on the ship, the shuttle has to be released manually, which means that she will have to stay behind and do it. The crew objects to this, but she pulls rank and tells them to go ahead with it. The shuttle launches, but as it heads down, they learn that the solar flare damaged the shuttle's auto-navigation system, so Santen has to steer it manually. He misses the target of the HAB and starts heading towards some random mountains. He releases the landing gear of the shuttle, which has Amy inside it, because it won't work in the mountains. Gigantic airbags are deployed for a soft landing, but as the shuttle hits the mountains, one of the bags explodes and the landing is anything but soft. Meanwhile, back on the ship, loss of power has deactivated the artificial gravity, and fires have erupted in multiple sectors. Bowman tries to put them out, but it's hard to use an extinguisher in zero gravity. She puts on her spacesuit, ties herself to the ship, and opens the airlock so that all the fire and smoke is sucked out of the ship. It works. On the ground, the crew gets out and takes stock of their situation. They have no way to navigate because they no longer have Amy, and they try to make educated guesses about which direction they have to start walking in order to find Hab. Pettengill blames Santen for dropping them on such jagged rocks that their equipment is now damaged. Meanwhile, Chantillas realizes that he sustained internal damage during the drop, and he has ruptured his spleen. Back on the ship, Bowman uses her ingenious engineering skills to bring the ship's power back online. Gallagher uses the last pictures taken by the Hab installation to figure out where they are located relative to Hab's position, and they get a direction to walk in. However, they have to be fast because they only have enough oxygen to last 7 hours. Chantillas grabs a rock and remembers how he told Gallagher that he was going to Mars in hopes of finding a rock that says, "Made by God." He tells the rest of the crew about his ruptured spleen and says they have to go on without him. Gallagher says a final goodbye to Chantillas, and the crew sets off. Back on the ship, Bowman manages to restore communications and tries to contact the crew, but to no avail. On the ground, Birchinall says it is strange how none of the algae they sent to Mars in the last 20 years can be seen. Even if the algae died, there should be traces of its decomposition, but it looks as if it was never there, like it's been scoured away. Gallagher argues that they may be in a region where the algae didn't reach, but Pettengill corrects him, saying that this entire dry plain is supposed to be covered with algae according to their data. Amy awakens inside the wreckage of the landing gear and gets out, but she appears to be damaged and continuously switching between military and navigation mode. She sends out a drone to locate the crew. Bowman is desperately trying to locate the crew on Mars and is worried when she finds out that they are not at their designated landing site. She locates the wreckage of the shuttle and the body of Chantillas, and that worries her even more. Meanwhile, the crew is walking and something is moving in the dirt around them. They spot Hab and scream in joy, but as they approach near, they see that the entire installation has been destroyed. Now they are devastated. On the ship, Bowman sees the same thing. She sends a message back to Earth explaining what has happened. As the crew members only have a few minutes of oxygen left, they all sit around waiting for death. Santen tells Pettengill that this isn't really his fault because Hab is destroyed, so they would have died even if he landed them in the right spot. Pettengill calls Santen out for his arrogance, and the argument gets heated. In the heat of the argument, Pettengill kicks Santen off a mountain, killing him. He is shocked at what he's done. He returns to Gallagher and Birchinall and says that Santen committed suicide. The oxygen levels of the crew reach the end and they prepare to die, but as Gallagher is suffocating in the panic, he removes his helmet and he realizes he can breathe the air. They all take off their helmets and realize that somehow, even without the algae, there is oxygen in the air. On the ship, Bowman receives communications from Earth telling her that she has 31 hours to get out of there before the ship no longer has enough fuel left for the return journey. She is instructed to leave the ground crew behind as they are presumed dead. Birchinall says that there is an old Mars rover not too far from their position, and they can use the radio in it to contact Bowman. They decide to head out to find it the next morning. At night, Amy finds the crew and they check her and find out her processor is damaged. They decide to take her apart and just use her drone, but when they say this, she goes into military mode and attacks them. She breaks one of Birchinall's ribs and leaves. He asks why she did this, and Gallagher says it's part of the military programming. She knows that they will try to take care of Birchinell, and that will slow them down, which will allow her to hunt them one by one more easily. The next morning, the crew locates the rover and uses its radio to contact Bowman. The transmissions are on an old frequency, so they take a while to reach the ship, and they assume that Bowman is just not responding. Right as Gallagher is about give up hope and throw the radio, Bowman reaches out to them. They bring her up to speed on everything that has happened, and she begins devising a plan to bring them back. After a while, Bowman contacts them and tells them that she's been informed that there is an old Russian probe that landed on Mars many years ago close to their vicinity. They can use it to get off the surface, but they only have 19 hours to get to it, because after that the ship won't have any fuel left to stay in orbit around Mars. The crew sets off toward the probe, and Bowman remembers a sweet moment she shared with Gallagher on the ship where he was about to kiss her. and she turned him away. As the crew is walking to the probe, Birchinall swears he's noticed the ground moving, but the others say they've seen nothing. Meanwhile, Amy is secretly following them. Bowman contacts Gallagher privately and tells him that the Russian probe only has space for 2 people in it, not 3. As the crew is nearing the Russian probe, an ice storm appears and they have to find shelter in a cave to survive. In the cave, Gallagher informs the other 2 that there is only room for 2 people on the Russian probe. He says since the other 2 are both actual scientists who need to go home and continue research, he will be the one staying behind. Pettengill, who knows both Birchinall and Gallagher suspect him for Santen's death, doesn't really believe they'll let him live. While the other 2 sleep, he takes the radio and runs. However, Amy catches up to him and kills him, and she makes the other 2 watch in order to scare them. Gallagher and Birchinall look for Pettengill's body, and on the way, they find algae. They wonder why it's only here and nowhere else. As they grab the radio from Pettengill's dead body, weird insects come out of it that burn as Birchinall tries to open Pettengill's suit with a torch. Birchinall figures out that the insects have been eating the algae and somehow their body produces oxygen. That's why they can breathe in this air even without the algae. He takes a sample of the insects to take back home, as they are the answer this mission came to find. As they continue walking, Birchinall begins to bleed because the insects are eating him from the inside. He hands the sample to Gallagher and tells him to take it back to Earth. He sacrifices himself for Gallagher by burning all the insects with a torch. Gallagher finally arrives at the Russian probe and gets ready to leave, but it turns out the probe's batteries are dead. Gallagher has no way to go home. He shares a heartfelt goodbye with Bowman over the radio, where he admits that he should have kissed her when he had the chance. Devastated, Bowman turns off the radio and prepares to leave. Just then, Amy arrives to kill Gallagher, and he decides to take one last shot by fighting Amy and using her batteries to launch the probe. He sets a trap for Amy using the fuel from the probe, and she falls for it. Finally, he uses Amy's battery and launches the probe. The probe flies at full speed and its old metal gets stripped off. It misses the ship in orbit, but Bowman sees it and goes out to rescue Gallagher. She manages to bring him back inside the ship, but he is not breathing. She gives him CPR, and after a few tense moments, he wakes up and the 2 prepare for their long journey back to Earth. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.